It's 1854, York, England. A crew of workers is digging a drainage channel beneath Minster Yard, routine Victorian infrastructure work, when their shovels hit something 2 feet down. Not pipes, not rubble, stone, carved stone. With letters so clean, so precise, that for a moment the workers probably thought they'd made some kind of mistake. They hadn't. What they pulled out of that ditch was a limestone slab, 61 centimeters of Imperial Latin, carved in parade ground precision, a formal declaration from the Roman Empire itself. And it said, in the language of conquerors, the Emperor Trajan made this gateway by the hand of the 9th Legion Hispana. Dated December 107 to December 108 AD, that slab is the last time, in the entire surviving written record of human civilization, that the 9th Legion is confirmed to exist. After December 108 AD, nothing. No transfer orders, no battle reports, no casualty lists, no commendations, no discharge records, no pension rolls. For 5,500 soldiers who had served Rome for over 150 years, who had bled for Julius Caesar in Gaul, who had been nearly destroyed by Boudicca's revolt in 61 AD and came back, who had literally built the city of York with their own hands, the record simply stops. Now, a researcher at the University of Cambridge named Dr. Christiana Scheib spent years analyzing the genomes of ancient individuals buried across Roman Britain. What her team found was striking. Roman Britain's rural populations showed almost no genetic input from the wider empire. Or the soldiers stationed in York, the 9th, were a concentrated pocket of foreign DNA in a country that barely changed around them. Which means when they disappeared, it wasn't gradual, it wasn't slow, it was specific. That's not what accident looks like. That's not even what disaster looks like. That's what a decision looks like. If you've ever wondered where we really come from, and I mean the parts of history that powerful people worked hard to bury, then subscribe, because what I'm about to show you goes much deeper than a missing army. Here's the thing. Between December 108 AD and 122 AD, there are 14 years of complete administrative silence on 5,500 soldiers in active imperial service. That gap doesn't exist for any other legion in Roman history. Not one. We know what that means. And we're going to prove it. Actually, real quick, before we go any further. Have you ever been somewhere in Britain, York, Hadrian's Wall, anywhere in the north, and felt like the ground was hiding something? Drop your location in the comments. Just your country or region is enough. Because by the end of this video, I'm going to show you why the dirt under certain parts of northern England is genetically different from the rest of the country, and why that difference has a name that Rome tried to erase. Gone. That's the word historians have used for 150 years. And in 1954, a British author named Rosemary Sutcliffe gave Gone a story that the whole world decided to believe. In her novel, The Eagle of the 9th Legion marches north of Hadrian's Wall into Caledonian Scotland. They walk into a fog-shrouded ambush. Tattooed picked warriors tear them apart. The Legion's eagle standard is lost. A young Roman officer goes to find it. It's a beautiful story. The BBC made it into a series. Hollywood turned it into a 2011 film. And by the time the eagle was playing in cinemas across the world, the Scotland theory had been repeated so many times by museums, by documentaries, by school teachers, that it stopped being a theory and started being treated as fact. There was one problem. Rosemary Sutcliffe made it up. Now, to be fair to her, she borrowed it. The Scotland annihilation theory originally came from a 19th century German historian named Theodor Mommsen, who proposed it without a single piece of archaeological evidence to back it up. And Professor Michael Fulford at the University of Reading in England has been very clear about what the actual physical record shows. His words, "There is no evidence, not even metal detectorists' finds of the debris of battle, for a Roman military catastrophe in northern Scotland during this entire period. No mass graves, no burned weapon deposits, no abandoned fortifications, no bones, no blood, nothing." And yet, the data said the exact opposite of everything we were taught. Here's what the Scotland theory actually is. Think about it from Rome's perspective. An empire that loses 5,500 soldiers to Scottish tribesmen is embarrassed. It's a humiliation. But an empire that quietly dissolves 5,500 soldiers and tells no one? That's something more interesting. So the Scotland story lets Rome look tragic. The truth, whatever it is, makes Rome look secretive. We didn't inherit a mystery. We inherited a cover story. In 2011, the Yorkshire Museum launched a whole exhibition around that very limestone slab we started with. Tour guides were telling visitors the Ninth probably died in Scotland. The slab itself, carved by the Ninth's own soldiers, records a building project, a gateway, full operational capacity, under imperial orders. The artifact was telling a completely different story than the exhibit around it, and in the 1990s, a farmer's plow in the Netherlands hit something that should have ended this debate permanently. It was barely reported outside specialist archaeology circles. Until now. Barely reported. Yeah, that's how you describe a finding that should have changed everything, and instead got quietly absorbed into academic journals while the popular story marched on unchanged. Nijmegen, Netherlands. A field near the Waal River, on the site of an old Roman fortress called Novia Magus Bataverum. A plow turns up a small silver-plated bronze pendant, roughly the size of a large coin, curved along one edge, and on its reverse, 3 words stamped into the metal, Leg Hisp 9. This is a phalera, a Roman military decoration, the equivalent of a service medal. It was awarded to a soldier of the 9th Legion, found in the Netherlands, more than 1,500 kilometers from Scotland, and dated, by the archaeological context around it, between 104 and 120 AD, after the supposed Scottish massacre, after the moment they were supposed to be dead. A Dutch archaeologist named Jules Bogaers had actually found something even more significant decades earlier. Working at the same Nijmegen site in the 1960s and 1970s, he recovered tile stamp fragments, clay construction tiles pressed with the Legion's unit mark before they were fired in a kiln. The Roman military equivalent of signing your name on a building permit. Multiple tiles, multiple impressions, all of them saying the same 3 letters, Legixp, all dated to the early 2nd century AD. Everything I just told you about Scotland? Hold on to it, because it's about to mean something completely different. The 9th was not a ghost, haunting some Scottish bog. They were building things, in the Netherlands, alive, operational, under orders. And this changes the nature of what we're actually looking at here. Shows if the 9th was alive and active in Nijmegen around 120 AD, then their disappearance from the record isn't a military defeat. It's something else. Someone removed them from the paperwork, not all at once, gradually, systematically. By 168 AD, when a stone inscription in Rome catalogued all active Roman legions, the 9th simply wasn't there. No explanation, no footnote, no formal dissolution ceremony. Just gone. The soldier who earned that pendant polished it before inspection. He had a rank, a bunk, a ration allocation. He pressed his unit's mark into wet clay tiles on the Rhine frontier. He was real, and Rome's official record, after 120 AD, says he never existed. That's not an accident of history. That's an act. For 150 years, Caledonian tribes have carried the cultural blame for destroying Rome's greatest Hispanian legion. The Netherlands tiles prove the 9th was alive after the supposed Scotland massacre. The Caledonians didn't do it. So here's the question. Rome's official record looks like it was specifically written to prevent you from asking, who did? Pattern. That's the word that matters here, because Rome was a pattern-making machine. And when it came to destroyed legions, the pattern was consistent and brutal. In 9 AD, 3 Roman legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, were wiped out in an ambush in a German forest called the Teutoburg. Emperor Augustus was reportedly so shattered that he wandered the palace at night crying out, "Varus, give me back my legions." Rome mourned publicly. Rome carved memorials. Rome talked about the Teutoburg massacre for centuries, and those 3 unit numbers, 17, 18, 19, were retired permanently, never reassigned, never recycled. In the entire remaining history of the Roman Empire, those numbers were frozen in grief. The 9th Legion's number, 9, was reassigned after their disappearance. This is not how Rome treats its martyred dead, but here's where it gets strange. Roman officers commissioned inscribed stone monuments to record their service histories, career epitaphs essentially, carved to last. And when researchers started cross-referencing those records, they found senior 9th Legion commanders appearing in new postings after 108 AD, fully promoted, serving in completely unrelated parts of the empire. So your Professor Lawrence Kepi at the University of Glasgow spent decades on Roman military epigraphy, career inscriptions, and his work identified multiple 9th Legion officer trajectories, continuing well past the point when those men should, according to the Scotland theory, have been dead. One of these officers doesn't just survive, he gets promoted. A legion annihilated in battle leaves survivor testimony, emergency dispatches, a propaganda response from the emperor claiming vengeance. What a legion that was administratively dissolved leaves behind is transferred officers, a reassigned number, and silence. Those are two completely different crimes. And now think about what was happening in Rome's east during the 130s AD. The Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to 135 AD, was the most catastrophic counterinsurgency campaign Rome ever fought in the eastern Mediterranean. The Roman historian Cassius Dio recorded that it killed 580,000 combatants and depopulated entire regions of Judea. Hadrian pulled military units from every frontier in the empire to put it down. When the dust settled, Hadrian's address to the Roman Senate omitted the traditional opening line, "I and the legions are in health," because they weren't. Legions had been gutted. The officer career records point east. Several commanders with documented 9th Legion service appear in eastern postings in the 120s and 130s. There are three things the officer records reveal. The third one changes the date of the 9th's death by 27 years. If the 9th was alive in Nijmegen around 120 AD, and the officer records point east by the 130s, then the standard timeline shatters completely. The 9th Legion may not have died in 108 AD in Scotland. They may have died in 135 AD in Judea. 27 years later than every museum exhibit, every school curriculum, every documentary film has ever claimed. 27 years. Let's say that's right. Let's follow the evidence all the way to where it logically leads. The 9th moves from Britain to the Rhine frontier around 120 AD. The Nijmegen tiles confirm that. Its officers show up in eastern postings by the 130s, and the eastern Mediterranean in 132 to 135 AD is the most violent theater in the Roman world. Hadrian is pulling legions from everywhere. The 9th gets deployed to Judea, and in Judea, they get destroyed. Case closed. This is actually where most serious historians currently land. The Bar Kokhba deployment theory is coherent. The evidence supports it. It ties the threads together cleanly. That should make you nervous. Because here's the thing about clean answers to questions that Rome chose to answer with silence. Satisfying explanations don't need 1900 years of erasure, they need acknowledgement, and Rome gave this one neither. Cassius Dio's account of the Bar Kokhba revolt is one of the most important documents we have, and that one detail, Hadrian omitting the Senate health formula after the campaign, is the closest Rome ever came to officially admitting catastrophic military losses. It's a gap in the script, a line that should have been there and wasn't. So a man's career record carved in stone is the paper trail that Rome forgot to destroy. But think about what Rome actually did after Bar Kokhba. Hadrian rebuilt Jerusalem as a Roman colonial city and renamed it Aelia Capitolina. He renamed the entire province Syria Palestina, erasing the word Judea from the official map. He was a man who knew exactly how to make a name disappear. If he also erased the 9th's final chapter by policy, rather than by accident, the question isn't whether the erasure happened. The question is what the erasure was protecting. Because here's what breaks the Judea theory wide open. If the 9th died honorably in Hadrian's most critical war, Rome would have commemorated them. It did exactly that for other units that took catastrophic losses in the same campaign, but continued in service. That's what Rome does not do, under any documented circumstance, not once in its entire military history, is delete a loyal unit from both surviving administrative catalogs without comment. The 9th isn't treated like a unit that died for Rome, it's treated like a unit that embarrassed Rome. And yet, the suppressed scholarship says something the museum still won't tell you. There is a strand of peer-reviewed academic inquiry, published in specialist journals, cited in careful footnotes, almost entirely absent from museum exhibits and school materials, that proposes the ninth was not destroyed by enemies at all, that it was disbanded by Hadrian himself. For a reason he considered too politically dangerous to record. That research has never appeared in a major public exhibition. It has never made it into a BBC documentary, or it has never been taught in a British classroom. The most uncomfortable explanation for the ninth's erasure has itself been quietly erased from the public record. The pattern is recursive, and it didn't stop in 168 AD. Actually, if you watched our last video on Rome's genetic legacy in Britain, you already saw the first piece of this puzzle. The DNA evidence showing that Roman soldiers left almost no genetic trace in Britain's rural population. Now, you understand why. The ninth wasn't everywhere. They were concentrated, specific, and they were removed. Did that last video change how you see Roman Britain at all? Tell me in the comments, and then stay with me. Because what's coming next is the part that video was building toward all along. Patterns leave biological traces, and biology doesn't lie. But here's something most people don't know about their own teeth. Dental enamel forms during childhood, and then it locks, permanently. The strontium isotopes it absorbs from the local water and soil become a chemical signature of where you grew up. No amount of travel, no decades in a foreign land, no burial thousands of miles from home can change it. Your teeth remember your childhood, always. When archaeologists analyze Roman-era male burials in York, they find something the museum panels don't fully explain. A significant number of the adult male skeletons are not local. Their enamel carries the isotopic signature of the Mediterranean basin, North Africa, the eastern provinces, the Danube region. These aren't administrators, these aren't traders. The bone density, the healed injuries, the burial positioning, these are soldiers. And their isotopic origin zones align precisely with the documented recruitment territories of the 9th Legion, Hispania, Southern Gaul, the Danubian provinces. Stay with me, because this next part is the reason this video exists. A researcher named Dr. Marina Soares da Silva, working at the Francis Crick Institute's Ancient Genomics Laboratory in London, published a study in 2023 that nobody in her immediate field quite knew what to do with. Her team had extracted ancient DNA from the inner ear bone of a male skeleton buried in Roman Britain, in Cambridgeshire, near a place called Offord Cluny. The burial was dated between 126 and 228 AD. Her words, describing the first result: "The first thing we saw was that genetically he was very different from the other Romano-British individuals studied so far." Different how? When they ran the full genomic analysis, this man's DNA placed him closest to late Bronze Age individuals from Armenia, from the Caucasus, from populations associated with the Sarmatians, the legendary horse warrior cultures of the Eurasian steppe. His Y chromosome haplogroup, R1b-Y13369. His isotopic profile showed he had moved across the Roman Empire during his childhood. He was not local. He had traveled far, and he died in a ditch in Cambridgeshire with no grave goods, buried quickly in the window of the 9th's administrative erasure. What they found next changed everything, because the genes Rome tried to erase are still in living people, right now. And here's what makes the York picture even stranger. Dr. Christiana Scheib at the University of Cambridge spent years analyzing ancient genomes from Roman Britain. Her 2024 study confirmed that Roman period individuals in rural Britain showed almost no genetic input from the wider empire. But York was not rural. York was a military fortress capital. The genetic signal there operates by completely different rules. The absence of Roman ancestry in rural Britain makes the presence of non-local ancestry in York's military burial population more significant, not less. In York's Roman cemetery record, there are children's graves, Roman names on the headstones, British strontium in the teeth, children born in York to foreign-born soldiers. Their fathers pressed tile stamps and polished service medals on the Rhine frontier. Their children grew up drinking York water. Their isotopic profiles are British. Their names are Latin. They are the biological record of a community that Rome pretended, after 120 AD, York had never existed. In November 2024, the University of York was awarded £1.49 million to conduct the largest combined genetic and isotopic study of a Roman population ever attempted in Britain. The study is ongoing, and if their sequencing reaches the York military burial population, it will be the first time the genetic identity of the Ninth's home fortress is read at full genomic resolution. We may be months away from being able to name the haplogroups that Rome erased. Erased. That word keeps coming back. But what does it actually cost a man, a specific man, to be erased? Let's call him Lucius Valerius Firmus. That's not a guess. That's a name built from the epigraphic naming conventions for Hispanic-born legionaries enrolled in the late 1st century AD. Dozens of similar names survive on discharge tablets and career inscriptions from the same period, the same region, the same unit type. Lucius is real in the sense that someone exactly like him existed. We just don't have his specific stone. He was recruited in Hispania Tarraconensis, probably 17 or 18 years old, the standard intake window. His teeth would carry the strontium signature of the Ebro River Valley, the same valley his family had farmed for generations. He fought in Domitian's Scottish campaigns in 82 and 83 AD. He survived. He came south. He helped reconstruct the York fortress in 108 AD. We know this because his unit's mark is still pressed into the clay tiles beneath the medieval city, and then he enters the gap in the record, and he doesn't come out. Dr. Alex Smith, which commenting on the DNA evidence from Roman Britain's military burials, noted something that stays with you. The isotopic analysis showed that soldiers like this one were often young when their travels across the empire began, and that entire families sometimes followed military units to their postings. Lucius's children, if he had them, would have grown up in York, British water in their teeth, Latin names on their tongues. His family would have buried their dead in British soil. His state would bury its files. And yet, the most important document Lucius was ever owed doesn't exist anywhere, in any archive, on any continent. The Roman discharge system, Honesta Missio, was meticulous. 25 years of service earned you a bronze diploma, a land grant, and formal citizenship confirmation. Legionaries who enrolled between 83 and 90 AD reached their discharge window between 108 and 115 AD. Precisely, the exact window of the administrative silence. For 5,500 men whose service contracts were legally due for completion, Rome produced no pension trail, no diploma record, no land grant register, not one. Over 800 Roman military discharge tablets have survived to the present day. They're in museums across Europe. The British Museum has them. Berlin has them. They cover legions from every corner of the empire, from every century of Rome's military history. Not one has ever been identified as belonging to a soldier of the 9th Legion. Not one. 800 documents. 5,500 men with the same discharge date, and the intersection is empty. This is not bureaucratic loss. This is bureaucratic refusal. The erasure of the 9th wasn't just a military deletion. It was the deletion of 5,500 men's legal right to acknowledgement by the state they spent a quarter of a century bleeding for. The University of York's ongoing DNA study may soon put genomic faces to those men, haplogroup profiles, origin regions, migration histories. They'll finally have names in the science, even if Rome burned the paperwork. The 9th left genetic descendants in northern England. Those descendants grew up with no story, no name, no knowledge of what their fathers had been, because Rome made absolutely sure no story survived to be carried forward. This is the oldest documented institutional identity theft in the Western record. While committed by the most administratively sophisticated state the ancient world ever produced, against its own soldiers, identity theft requires a thief, and the evidence now points to exactly one man, Publius Aelius Hadrianus, emperor from 117 to 138 AD. He arrives in Britain in 122 AD and replaces the 9th with the 6th Legion, without recording why. He fights the Bar Kokhba revolt and omits the Senate health formula afterward, without explaining the losses. He oversees the compilation of the Roman Legion catalog, in which the 9th is simply absent, without footnote or explanation. He renames Judea to erase the word from the map. He builds a new city on the ruins of Jerusalem, with no acknowledgement of what stood before. This is a man with a documented, consistent, or hands-on practice of making inconvenient things disappear from the official record. Everything I just told you about Hadrian, the great builder, the great administrator, the man who unified the empire, hold on to it, because it's about to mean something completely different. Scholarship on Hadrian's administrative methods, including work connected to Tel Aviv University historian Dr. Margaret Finkelberg, who has written extensively on Hadrian's Eastern policies, points to a consistent pattern. Hadrian personally audited military units during his imperial tours. He visited every major frontier. He reviewed unit performance directly, and he decommissioned assets he considered politically inconvenient, not just militarily underperforming, but politically inconvenient. This behavior is documented across multiple provinces. But the ninth's erasure is not an anomaly in Hadrian's record. It is a consistent application of a documented method. When Hadrian becomes the agent, not the witness, but the agent, the story changes completely. The ninth's erasure stops being a mystery about where they died. It becomes a question about what they knew. Units dissolved by emperors, as distinct from units destroyed in battle, typically share one thing. They witnessed something a sitting emperor could not afford to have circulating in the record. The ninth was stationed in York during the critical period of Hadrian's wall planning. They were present during the 117 AD northern disturbances, military troubles serious enough that Trajan's advisors had flagged them. The ninth held the fortress that Hadrian would take over. They heard the orders given before the wall was built, and they knew what happened in those disturbances. They knew the numbers. And Hadrian is one of Rome's most celebrated emperors. He's on the tourist trail of Western civilization, the Pantheon, the wall that bears his name, the reign that's described in textbooks as a golden age of stability and culture. The evidence suggests he may have committed the most thorough institutional erasure in Roman military history, not of an enemy, but of his own people. In York's Roman-era cemetery, there is a burial cluster, adult males, hastily interred, no grave goods, no inscriptions, dated by pottery context to 120 to 130 AD. It predates the 6th Legion's full establishment. These bodies were put in the ground fast, by people who didn't want to leave a record. This cluster has a name in the archaeological literature, the Trentholm Drive Deposit. In no published study has it ever been formally connected to the 9th Legion. That connection has been available for decades. Nobody has made it in print. Ask yourself why. Open a British Key Stage 2 history curriculum guide right now. Search for 9th Legion. You will find one entry in a unit called Invaders and Settlers, Romans. It says the 9th Legion, quote, may have been destroyed in Scotland. That's it. That's the full scope of what Britain's national curriculum says about the disappearance of the most forensically documented missing military unit in Western history. May have been. Scotland. The Nijmegen tile stamps have been in the archaeological literature since the 1960s and 1970s. The pendant was found in the 1990s. The officer career record analysis has been available since at least 2010. The Bar Kokhba deployment theory has been cited in peer-reviewed journals for years. None of it, none, has made it into the standard public account. The 2011 film The Eagle came out the same year. Serious academic revision of the Scotland theory was being openly discussed in British university archaeology departments. It opened to millions of viewers worldwide. It presented the Scotland annihilation as settled historical fact. The popular record and the scholarly record moved in exactly opposite directions, simultaneously. This is what institutional narrative maintenance actually looks like. It doesn't require active suppression. It doesn't require a conspiracy. It requires the inertia of comfortable stories, the slow metabolism of museums that haven't updated their exhibit panels since 1987, and the cultural lag between what academics know and what school children are taught. The Scotland story is easy to teach. The Nijmegen Judea-Hadrian story requires explaining why Rome would erase its own soldiers, and that question implicates every powerful institution that has ever existed. In 2011, the Yorkshire Museum placed the York limestone slab at the center of its newly renovated main hall. Educational panels around it describe the Ninth's disappearance as a mystery. They don't mention Nijmegen. They don't mention the officer career records. They don't mention the discharge tablets that should exist and don't. The slab sits in that room. Every day, people who saw the eagle file past it and read the panels. The artifact is telling a completely different story than the room around it. But it has been telling that story for 1900 years, and most of the people walking past it have no idea. Somewhere in Yorkshire right now, statistically, there are people with Iberian ancestry markers in their genome and strontium isotopes in their teeth that trace back to the Ebro River Valley. They don't know. Their children don't know. The story their biology is carrying has never been told to them because Rome made sure it wouldn't be, and the institutions that followed Rome, knowingly or not, kept that silence going. A 1900-year-old cover-up doesn't stay alive because powerful people work to maintain it. It stays alive because the rest of us keep teaching the comfortable version, and we're still doing it, right now, in classrooms across Britain. Some of the soldiers of the 9th Legion have been waiting almost 2,000 years for someone to read their discharge paperwork and say, "We see you. Here is the truth we've been building toward, and I want you to sit with it because it doesn't have a clean ending." The 9th Legion didn't vanish. They were processed, transferred, redeployed, possibly destroyed in Judea, possibly disbanded by an emperor who needed them quiet, and then, with surgical administrative precision, removed from the record of a state that documented everything, every brick, every coin, every tile. The University of York's £1.49 million ancient DNA study is running right now. It is the largest genomic study of a Roman population ever attempted in Britain. When it reaches the York military burial population, and it will, we will have, for the first time, the actual genetic identities of the men who lived and died in the 9th's home fortress. We will know their haplogroups, their origin regions, the routes they traveled to get to a cold northern city they probably never chose, the DNA that Rome couldn't erase because it wasn't written on stone, it was written in bone. But here's the thing that won't be resolved, not by that study, not by any study. We will never know what the 9th saw. We will never know what they heard in those disturbances in 117 AD, in the planning sessions before the wall was built, in the orders given in rooms that have been rubble for 16 centuries. We will never know what Hadrian decided they knew too much to be allowed to carry forward. That information, whatever it was, went into the ground with them, deliberately. The York limestone slab is in a museum right now. You can go see it. You can read the Latin. You can put your hand near those letters that legionaries carved in December of 108 AD, their last official act in the record of human history. They built something. They signed their name to it. And then someone made sure that name would never appear again. The science is coming. The DNA is being read. The teeth are talking. But the order that silenced them, whoever gave it, in whatever room, for whatever reason, that order worked. For 1900 years. It is still working. And the most unsettling question in this entire story isn't where the 9th died. It's this. If an empire as obsessively meticulous as Rome could make 5,500 men disappear from history so completely that we are still arguing about it 2,000 years later, what else did they erase that we haven't even noticed is missing?